Welcome to crazy HOA life. I brought a binder, and she brought excuses. A file cart rolled past the front desk, and Karen screamed that my records request was abuse and she would charge me for it. You missed the deadline, and now you get the consequences. Monica Campbell slammed a clipboard on the management office counter so hard the pen bounced off and hit the floor. I stood there with my backpack strap digging into my shoulder, the camera case inside pressing against my ribs, and I watched her face turn red. The file cart kept rolling. A neighbor behind me stepped back. Monica pointed at the violation notice clipped to the board. No readable text, but I knew what it said, and she tapped that metal key fob on the counter twice. That fob was her signature move. She used it to demand silence at every meeting, every hallway argument, every mailbox cluster ambush. The sound echoed in the small lobby. I work for the City Parks Department in Erie, Pennsylvania. I know permits. I know right-of-way rules. I know when someone is lying about a deadline because I spend half my day filing extension requests and tracking comment periods. Monica did not care. She ran the Pool and Amenities Committee for the Harborview Village Association like a bouncer at a private club. And she had decided I was a problem 3 months ago when I asked why my neighbor got 2 weeks to fix a fence and I got 3 days to move a storage bin. The story goes back further than that, but I did not know it yet. Monica leaned over the counter. "You think this is petty. I think this is my purpose." She said it with her teeth showing. The management company receptionist, a tired woman named Linda, pretended to type something and would not make eye contact. Monica turned to the neighbor who had been waiting behind me. "You see this? This is what happens when someone tries to abuse the system." The neighbor, an older man in a Steelers jacket, just nodded and looked at his phone. I kept my voice flat. "I submitted the request 2 weeks ago. You said I would get the documents in 10 business days. That was yesterday." Monica picked up the clipboard and waved it. The policy changed. New format. You have to resubmit with a notarized cover letter and a processing fee. I felt my jaw tighten, but I kept my face neutral. "That was not in the email you sent me last week." She smiled. "We can tow first and explain later. That is how enforcement works." That line stuck with me. I did not know it then, but I would hear it again, in a very different context, and it would be the thread that unraveled everything. Monica turned and walked toward the back office. The file cart was still sitting near the copier, half the folders hanging crooked. I looked at Linda. She glanced up, then down. I knew that look. She had seen this before. I left the office and stood in the parking lot. After rain puddles showed fresh tracks at the curb. A tow truck had been here recently. I could see the grooves in the mud near the visitor spaces. I pulled out my phone and started a new note. Timeline. First entry. Submitted records request April 2nd. Acknowledged same day. Deadline April 16th. Monica changes policy April 17th. The stakes were simple. I was 3 months into a new job with the City Parks Department, still on probation, and I could not miss work for HOA hearings or spend my lunch breaks fighting over mailbox placement and storage bin setbacks. If Monica kept escalating, I would have to choose between keeping my job and keeping my house in compliance. She knew that. She had already scheduled a hearing for a Thursday morning, sent the notice to my old email address, and then claimed I missed it. That was escalation step 1. My phone buzzed. Text from my neighbor Dave, former board member, 2 terms, quit last year when Monica took over the Amenities Committee. The text said, "She did this to the Fosters in 2023, same pattern. You need to see the old complaint file." I walked back to my truck. A passerby was standing near the entrance holding up a phone with the screen turned away, recording something. I did not think much of it at the time. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a stack of printed HOA minutes going back 2 years. Dave had dropped them off in a manila envelope, no return address, and told me to look for anything about the Fosters. I found 3 references. February 2023, complaint filed by resident regarding selective towing enforcement. March 2023, complaint withdrawn, no explanation in minutes. April 2023, Fosters sell and move out. I flipped back to the February entry. The complaint mentioned a vendor relationship with a towing company called Northside Recovery. The complaint said the company was towing residents without proper notice, and the HOA was not verifying violations before authorizing removals. The March minutes had one line, matter resolved, no further action required. I opened my laptop and searched Northside Recovery Erie, PA. First result was a Better Business Bureau page with a dozen complaints. Second result was a news article from 2023 about the company losing a city contract after repeated complaints about predatory practices. Third result was the state complaint database. I clicked through. Northside Recovery, multiple citations, one from the Pennsylvania Attorney General for deceptive trade practices, settled in late 2023. I leaned back. Monica had been on the board in 2023. She was not chair yet, but she was on the compliance subcommittee. If she had pushed the HOA to use Northside even after complaints, and if the Fosters had caught her doing it, that would explain why their complaint disappeared. My phone buzzed again. Dave, check your door. I walked to the front door and opened it. A notice was taped to the glass. Violation unauthorized records request resubmission required by April 21st or account will be fined $50 per day. Today was April 18th. I pulled the notice down and looked at the timestamp printed at the bottom. The notice was dated April 16th, 2 days ago. My doorbell camera would have caught whoever put it here. I opened the camera app and scrolled back. April 16th, 11:47 p.m. A figure in a gray jacket, hood up, walked up to my door and taped something to the glass. The motion sensor triggered. The figure turned slightly. I zoomed in. It was Monica. She glanced at the camera, then walked away. The timestamp was clear. I saved the clip. The next morning, I called the management company and asked to speak to the property manager, not the front desk. I got transferred 3 times. Finally, a man named Greg answered. I explained the situation, records request, policy change, new notice dated 2 days ago, but delivered last night. Greg sighed. He said Monica had been pushing for stricter enforcement on records requests because she believed residents were using them to harass the board. I asked if the policy change was official. He said it was not in the bylaws yet, but Monica had sent an email to the board suggesting it. I asked for a copy of that email. He said he would check. I hung up and drove to work. My supervisor, a woman named Kim, who had been with the Parks Department for 20 years, noticed I was distracted during the morning safety meeting. She pulled me aside after. Everything okay? I told her the short version. HOA dispute, escalating, might need to take a personal day for a hearing if it keeps going. Kim frowned. You are still on probation. I can give you 1 day, but if this becomes a pattern, we have a problem. I nodded. Understood. She looked at me for a second. You seem like you have your head on straight. Do not let some neighborhood busybody cost you this job. I spent my lunch break in the truck, parked at a trailhead, going through my phone notes. I had the doorbell camera clip showing Monica delivering a backdated notice. I had the email chain from 2 weeks ago confirming the original records request deadline. I had Dave's complaint file showing a pattern with the Fosters. I needed more. I needed something that connected Monica directly to the vendor abuse and proved she was using the HOA to cover it up. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. This is Northside Recovery. We have an authorization to remove a vehicle from your property at 487 Lakeshore Drive. I sat up. My address. I do not have a vehicle that needs removing. The voice on the other end, a man, sounded bored. We have an HOA work order. Silver sedan. Expired registration. My car registration was current. I had renewed it in March. That is incorrect. My registration is valid. The man paused. Hold on. I heard papers shuffling. Okay. The work order says expired registration. Non-compliance with parking rules authorized by Monica Campbell, amenities chair. I felt my chest tighten. When was this work order issued? April 17th. That was the day after Monica changed the records request policy. This was escalation step 2. She was trying to tow my car. I kept my voice calm. I need a copy of that work order. Can you email it to me? The man hesitated. I can fax it to the HOA office. No. Email it to me directly. I gave him my email address. If you tow my car without verifying the registration, I will file a complaint with the State Attorney General. Another pause. Let me talk to my supervisor. He put me on hold. I waited 3 minutes. He came back. Supervisor says we are not moving forward until we verify. You need to send us proof of current registration. I can do that right now. I hung up, pulled up my registration scan on my phone, and emailed it to the address the man gave me. Then I called Dave. Dave answered on the second ring. What is up? Monica just tried to tow my car. Northside Recovery, same company from the Foster's case. Dave swore. She is using the same playbook. You need to stop her before she bankrupts you with fake fines. I need the name of the Foster who filed the complaint. Dave was quiet for a second. Ellen Foster. She moved to Pittsburgh. I have her number somewhere. Give me 10 minutes. I waited in the truck. A Parks Department crew pulled into the lot and started unloading equipment for a trail maintenance project. I watched them work and thought about Monica's line. We can tow first and explain later. That is how enforcement works. She had said it like it was policy, like it was normal. If she had been saying that to other residents, and if she had been pushing Northside to act on her word alone, that was a pattern. That was proof. Dave texted me Ellen Foster's number. I called her. She answered after 4 rings. A woman's voice, guarded. Hello? Ellen Foster? My name is Mark. I live in Harborview Village. Dave gave me your number. I am dealing with the same thing you dealt with in 2023. Silence. Then, Monica Campbell? Yes. Ellen exhaled. What did she do? I told her the short version. Records request, backdated notice, tow attempt. Ellen listened. When I finished, she said, she tried to tow our car 3 times. We had to pay Northside $200 just to keep them from taking it while we sorted out the paperwork. The HOA never refunded us. We filed a complaint, and a week later, Monica showed up at our house with a new violation notice for our fence. The fence had been there for 5 years. We sold and moved. Did you keep any of the paperwork? Ellen paused. I have the emails. I have the complaint I submitted to the board. I have the tow work orders. I kept everything because I thought about suing, but we just wanted to get out. Can you send me copies? Why? Because she is doing it again, and this time, I am not leaving. I am going to stop her. Ellen was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I will send you everything I have. But be careful. Monica does not just fight back. She tries to destroy you. Ellen sent the files that afternoon. 43 pages. Emails, work orders, complaint letters, photos of the fence, copies of the HOA bylaws with sections highlighted. I printed everything at the library after work and put it in a binder. I added my own documentation, doorbell camera clip screenshots with timestamps, email chain from the records request, registration proof, the backdated notice. I now had 2 cases showing the same pattern. Monica pushes a vendor to act on her authority. Resident pushes back. Monica escalates with new violations. Resident either pays or leaves. The question was, why? What was in it for her? I flipped through Ellen's emails and found one dated March 2023, sent from Ellen to the board. The subject line was, "Request for accounting of vendor payments." The body said, "I am requesting copies of all invoices and payments made to Northside Recovery for the past 12 months, as allowed under Section 7.3 of the bylaws. The board has not responded to my previous 2 requests." I checked the minutes. No mention of the request. No response recorded. I opened my laptop and pulled up the Harborview Village Association financial summaries posted on the HOA website. The summaries were sparse. Line items for landscaping, snow removal, insurance, management fees. Vendor expenses lumped together under one heading, compliance and enforcement services. I clicked on the 2023 summary. Compliance and enforcement services, $18,000. I clicked on 2022. Compliance and enforcement services, $4,000. The jump was massive. I checked 2024. $22,000. Northside Recovery was not just towing a few cars. They were billing the HOA for thousands of dollars a year, and Monica was the one authorizing the work orders. I needed to see the invoices. I drafted a new records request, formal, citing the exact bylaw section Ellen had used, asking for copies of all Northside Recovery invoices and payment records for 2022 through 2024. I emailed it to the management company, copied the entire board, and sent a courtesy copy to Monica. Her response came in 6 minutes. Denied. Vendor financial records are confidential under board discretion. This is harassment. I replied, "The bylaws do not grant confidentiality for vendor payments." Section 7.3 states all financial records are available to members upon written request. I have made a written request. Monica replied again, this time copying the board and the management company, "Your repeated requests are disrupting association operations. If you continue, the board will consider sanctions including fines and suspension of amenity access." I sat back. She was panicking. That meant I was close. I forwarded the entire chain to Dave. He called me 2 minutes later. "She just threatened you in writing. You need to file a complaint with the state." Pennsylvania has a complaint process for HOA disputes? Dave laughed. Not exactly, but the Attorney General handles consumer protection complaints, and if Monica is using her HOA position to protect a vendor relationship that is costing members money, that is a consumer issue. I spent that evening filling out the state complaint form. I attached the email chain, Ellen's files, the financial summaries showing the spending jump, and a narrative summary explaining the pattern. I included my doorbell camera clip showing the backdated notice. I submitted it online. The confirmation page said complaints are reviewed within 30 days. I did not have 30 days. Monica had already tried to tow my car once. She had already backdated a notice and threatened fines. If I waited 30 days, she would escalate again, and I would be facing a lien or a lawsuit. I needed to force her hand now. If you are enjoying this story, hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life HOA justice. I called Dave and told him my plan. We need to trigger a special meeting. The bylaws allow members to petition for one if they get signatures from 20% of the homeowners. How many houses are in Harborview? Dave thought for a second. 84. So I need 17 signatures. Dave was quiet. You are not going to get 17 people to go against Monica. Half the neighborhood is scared of her, and the other half does not care. Then I need to give them a reason to care. I drafted a petition, simple, 1 page. It called for a special meeting to review vendor relationships and financial transparency, specifically requesting an audit of compliance and enforcement spending from 2022 to present. It cited Section 9.2 of the bylaws, which allowed member-initiated meetings. I included a short explanation. Recent concerns about selective enforcement and vendor billing practices have raised questions about financial oversight. This meeting will allow members to review records and ask questions. I printed 20 copies and started knocking on doors. The first 3 houses were strikeouts. No answer. The 4th house was a young couple who listened politely and then said they did not want to get involved. The 5th house was a retired teacher named Barbara who had lived in Harborview for 15 years. She read the petition, looked at me, and said, "Monica tried to fine me last year because my mailbox post was the wrong color. The bylaws do not specify mailbox post color. I painted it back to white just to shut her up." Barbara signed. The 6th house was a man named Tony who worked nights. He opened the door in sweatpants and a t-shirt, squinting in the daylight. I explained the petition. He said, "She towed my girlfriend's car last year. We were parked in my driveway. She said it was a commercial vehicle because it had a decal from her work. It is a Corolla." Tony signed. By the end of the weekend, I had 19 signatures. I delivered the petition to the management company on Monday morning. Linda at the front desk took it without a word and said she would forward it to the board. Monica called me that night. "You are making a huge mistake." I put the phone on speaker and opened my voice recorder app. I am exercising my rights under the bylaws. "You are harassing the board. You are wasting everyone's time. You think this is petty. I think this is my purpose." There it was again, her catchphrase. I stayed quiet. Monica kept going. "The meeting is not going to happen. Even if it does, the board controls the agenda. You are not going to get your little audit. The bylaws say the petitioners set the agenda for a special meeting." Monica laughed. "The bylaws say a lot of things. We will see what the lawyer says." She hung up. I saved the recording. The management company sent an email 2 days later confirming the special meeting. Date, April 28th. Location, Community Center. Time, 7 p.m. The email included a note from the board. The agenda will include a discussion of member concerns, but financial records are subject to board review and approval before release. That was Monica trying to control the outcome before the meeting even started. I replied to the email copying the full board. Section 7.3 does not require board approval for financial record requests. The records must be made available upon written request. I submitted that request 2 weeks ago. No response. I called Ellen Foster. She answered on the first ring. "The meeting is in 6 days. Do you have time to testify?" Ellen hesitated. "Testify?" "Just tell your story. 3 minutes. What Monica did, what the HOA did, why you left. I need someone besides me saying this is a pattern." Ellen was quiet. "Then I have a work trip that week. I land back in Pittsburgh the night before. If I can make it, I will, but I cannot promise." "I understand." Ellen paused. "You said you were going to stop her. How?" I have a trump card. But I am not playing it until she commits. What does that mean? It means I want her to lie in front of everyone. I want her to say the records are confidential, or the complaints are fake, or the spending is justified. And then I am going to prove she is wrong. Ellen laughed, but it sounded bitter. Good luck. Monica does not admit she is wrong. She just gets louder. That is what I am counting on. I spent the next 3 days preparing. I put together a binder with everything. Ellen's case, my case, the financial summaries, the email chains, the doorbell camera screenshots, the tow work orders, the state complaint confirmation. I made 3 copies. One for me, one for the board, one for the room. On April 26th, 2 days before the meeting, I got an email from Greg at the management company. Subject: Vendor Records Request, Partial Response. The body said, attached are summaries of payments to Northside Recovery for 2023 and 2024. Detailed invoices are being reviewed by the board and will be provided pending approval. I opened the attachment. It was a 2-page spreadsheet. Dates, amounts, and 1-line descriptions. March 2023, towing service, $850. April 2023, towing service, $1,200. June 2023, towing service, $950. The entries continued, 2 or 3 per month, through 2024. Total for 2023, $16,400. Total for 2024 so far, $8,700. I cross-referenced the dates with the complaint file from Ellen. March 2023, $850. That was the same month Ellen filed her complaint. The tow work order in her file showed the charge was $200. Where did the other $650 go? I checked another entry. June 2023, $950. Ellen's file did not have anything for June, but I searched the HOA minutes. June 2023, Board approves vendor contract renewal with Northside Recovery for compliance services. Monica had been billing the HOA for tows that either did not happen or were inflated, and she had renewed the contract right after Ellen left. I had the pattern, I had the numbers, I had the proof, but I needed one more piece. I needed to know if Monica was getting a kickback. I called a friend who worked in municipal finance. I explained the situation and asked if there was a way to check if Monica had a financial relationship with Northside Recovery. My friend said, if she is on their payroll, you would need access to their employee records, which you are not getting. But if she has a business relationship, like a consulting contract, that might be public if she filed it with the state. Pennsylvania requires disclosure for certain vendor relationships if the person is also a board member of a nonprofit. I pulled up the Pennsylvania Department of State business database and searched Monica Campbell. 2 results. One was a cosmetology license, expired. The other was a business entity filed in 2022, MCC Compliance Consulting LLC. I clicked through. The entity was active. Registered agent, Monica Campbell. Business address, a P.O. box in Erie. I searched Northside Recovery and pulled up their state filings. In the vendor disclosure section, filed in 2023, there was one entry, MCC Compliance Consulting LLC, contracted for administrative coordination services. Monica was billing Northside for consulting work, while also authorizing the HOA to pay Northside for towing. I leaned back and stared at the screen. That was it. That was the trump card. The night before the meeting, I got a text from Ellen. I made it back. I will be there. I replied, thank you. She sent one more message. Do not let her spin this. She is good at making herself the victim. The morning of April 28th, I woke up early and ran through the plan one more time. Monica would try to control the meeting. She would say the records request was harassment. She would say the vendor relationship was proper. She would claim the complaints were isolated incidents. I would let her. I would let her commit to those positions in front of the room. And then I would deploy the trump card. I loaded the binders into my truck and drove to work. Kim pulled me aside during the morning break. "You still dealing with that HOA thing?" I nodded. "Meeting tonight." Kim looked at me for a second. "You need tomorrow off?" "Hopefully not." She handed me a note card. "That is my cell number. If this goes sideways and you need a reference or a witness that you are reliable, call me. I do not know what they are accusing you of, but I have seen you show up on time every day for 3 months and do good work. That counts for something." I took the card. "Thank you." The meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. I got to the community center at 6:30. A dozen people were already there, standing in clusters near the folding chairs. I saw Barbara, the retired teacher. I saw Tony, the guy whose girlfriend got towed. I saw Dave near the back, arms crossed. Ellen Foster walked in at 6:45. She looked tired but determined. She saw me and nodded. Monica arrived at 6:55 with 2 other board members. She was wearing the gray jacket and the bucket hat pulled low. The tiny body camera was clipped to her collar. She saw me, and her face went tight. She walked to the front table and started setting up a laptop and a stack of folders. The management company sent Greg, the property manager. He stood near the side door with his arms folded, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. At 7 p.m., the board president, a man named Richard, called the meeting to order. He read the agenda. Special meeting called by member petition. Topic: Review of vendor relationships and financial transparency. Public comment period. Monica stood up before Richard finished. She tapped that metal key fob on the table twice. "I want to address this before we waste everyone's time. The petition that triggered this meeting is based on false claims and harassment. The member who filed it," she pointed at me, "has been abusing the records request process to disrupt board operations. The vendor relationship with Northside Recovery is proper, contracted, and approved by this board. Any complaints about selective enforcement are isolated incidents that were resolved. This meeting is a waste." Richard looked uncomfortable. "Monica, the petition was valid. We have to hear the concerns." Monica sat down. "Fine, let them talk." Richard looked at me. "You want to start?" I stood up. I kept my voice calm. "I am here because the HOA has been using a vendor, Northside Recovery, to enforce violations without proper notice and without verifying compliance. This has been happening for at least 2 years. I have documentation showing a pattern of backdated notices, inflated charges, and selective targeting. I also have evidence that the board member in charge of vendor relationships, Monica Campbell, has a financial conflict of interest." Monica shot up. "That is a lie. You are slandering me in a public meeting." I looked at her. "I have the state business filings. MCC Compliance Consulting LLC. Registered to you. Contracted by Northside Recovery in 2023. You have been billing them for consulting work while also authorizing the HOA to pay them for services." The room went silent. Monica's face turned red. "That is a separate business. It has nothing to do with the HOA." I pulled out the binder and held it up. The HOA has paid Northside over $25,000 in the past 2 years. Your consulting company has been paid by Northside during that same period. That is a conflict of interest. That is why you have been blocking records requests. That is why you tried to tow my car when I asked questions." Monica slammed her hand on the table. "You do not know what you are talking about. My business provides administrative support to vendors. That is legal. That is normal. Then why did you refuse to disclose it when I asked for vendor financial records? Monica opened her mouth, then closed it. Richard, the board president, stood up. Monica, is this true? Do you have a business relationship with Northside? Monica turned to him. It is not relevant. My business is separate. Richard looked at Greg, the property manager. Greg, did you know about this? Greg shook his head. No. Monica handles vendor contracts directly. She told us it was board approved. Richard turned back to Monica. Did the board approve your consulting relationship with Northside? Monica did not answer. I kept going. I have copies of the financial summaries showing the HOA paid Northside $16,000 in 2023. I have work orders showing charges that do not match the actual services provided. I have emails from another resident, Ellen Foster, showing the same pattern in 2023. Monica tried to tow her car 3 times, billed the HOA for it, and then forced her to leave after she filed a complaint. Ellen stood up from her seat. That is true. I am Ellen Foster. I moved out in 2023 because Monica used the HOA to harass me after I asked questions about vendor billing. I have all the documentation. I kept it because I thought about suing. I brought copies tonight. The room erupted. People started talking over each other. Barbara, the retired teacher, stood up. I filed a complaint about selective enforcement last year, and the board never responded. Tony stood up. She towed my girlfriend's car for no reason. A woman I did not recognize stood up. She fined me $300 for a mailbox and never explained why. Monica looked around the room, her face going from red to pale. She grabbed the key fob and tapped it on the table. Order. We need order. Nobody stopped talking. Richard banged his hand on the table. Everyone sit down. Let him finish. I waited until the room quieted. I have one more thing. I filed a complaint with the Pennsylvania Attorney General 2 weeks ago. I submitted documentation showing a pattern of consumer abuse tied to the Northside relationship. I received a confirmation yesterday that the complaint is under review. If this board does not act, the state will. Richard looked at Monica. Monica, do you want to respond? Monica sat down slowly. Her hands were shaking. She looked at the key fob, then at the binder I was holding. She did not say anything. I kept going. I am not here to destroy the HOA. I am here to stop one person from using it as a personal enforcement tool. If the board wants to resolve this tonight, I have a proposal. The HOA terminates the contract with Northside Recovery immediately. The board votes to remove Monica Campbell from her position as amenities chair. The HOA refunds all fines and fees tied to Northside enforcement actions from the past 2 years. And the board commissions an independent audit of vendor spending. Richard looked around the table. The other 2 board members, a man and a woman I did not know, both nodded. Richard turned to Monica. Monica, I think you need to step down. Monica stood up. You think this is petty? I think this is my purpose. Her voice cracked. I have given this community 3 years of my life. I have enforced rules nobody else wanted to enforce. I have kept this neighborhood safe and clean. And this, she pointed at me, this is what I get? Barbara stood up again. You tried to find me for a mailbox. Tony stood up. You towed my girlfriend's car. Ellen stood up. You forced me out of my home. Monica looked around the room. Nobody was on her side. She grabbed her folders, stuffed them into a bag, and walked toward the door. She stopped and turned back. You are all going to regret this. She looked at me, especially you. She left. The room stayed quiet for a long moment. Then, Richard cleared his throat. I am calling for a vote. All in favor of terminating the contract with Northside Recovery? Every hand went up. Richard nodded. All in favor of removing Monica Campbell from the amenities chair position? Every hand went up. Richard looked at me. We will work on the refunds and the audit. Thank you for bringing this forward. I sat down. Dave walked over and clapped me on the shoulder. You did it. Ellen came over. She looked relieved. Thank you. I did not think anyone would ever hold her accountable. I handed her one of the binders. Keep this. You earned it. The next morning, I got an email from Greg at the management company. Subject: Northside contract termination. The body said, the board voted last night to terminate the vendor relationship effective immediately. Northside has been notified. All pending tow authorizations have been canceled. A refund process will begin next week. I forwarded the email to Ellen and Dave. Ellen replied, Justice. Dave replied, Drinks on me. I went to work and told Kim the short version. Meeting went well. No more HOA drama. Kim smiled. Good. Now focus on not screwing up your probation. That afternoon, Monica posted on the neighborhood Facebook group a long rant about being attacked by a member with a vendetta, about the board caving to pressure, about the association losing a valuable vendor relationship. She ended with, You think this is petty. I think this is my purpose. Some of you will understand when the neighborhood falls apart. 3 people commented. One said, You tried to tow my car. Another said, Good riddance. The third said, The neighborhood is fine. Monica deleted the post an hour later. 2 weeks went by. The HOA hired a new management company to handle vendor relationships and compliance. They fired Greg. The new company sent an email to all members explaining the refund process and offering a voluntary audit review for anyone who believed they had been unfairly fined. Barbara got her $300 mailbox fine refunded. Tony got $200 back for the tow charge. Ellen got a check for $400 and a formal apology letter from the board. I got a notice in the mail. Refund, $150 for processing fees tied to the records request dispute. Enclosed was a check and a note from Richard. Thank you for your diligence. The association is better for it. On May 15th, I got a call from an unknown number. I answered. This is Investigator Patel with the Pennsylvania Attorney General Consumer Protection Division. I am following up on your complaint regarding Harborview Village Association and Northside Recovery. I sat down. Yes. Patel said, We reviewed your submission and the supporting documents. We have opened a formal investigation into Northside Recovery for deceptive trade practices. We are also reviewing the business relationship between Monica Campbell and Northside for potential conflict of interest violations under nonprofit board regulations. I want to let you know that your complaint was credible and well documented. It helped us move forward. I felt a weight lift. Thank you. Patel continued, We may contact you for a follow-up interview in the next few weeks. In the meantime, if you experience any retaliation from the involved parties, document it and contact us immediately. I will. Patel hung up. I sat there for a minute staring at my phone. It was over. Monica was out. Northside was done. The state was investigating. The HOA was cleaning house. The cold case was closed. But the story was not quite finished. 3 weeks later, I was at the grocery store when I ran into Monica. She was in the produce section, wearing the gray jacket and the bucket hat. She saw me and froze. I kept walking. She followed me into the cereal aisle. You ruined my life. I stopped and turned. I did not ruin your life. You did. Monica stepped closer. Her voice was low and tight. I lost my consulting contract. Northside is suing me for breach. The state is investigating me. The board kicked me out. I had to resign from every committee. People cross the street when they see me. I kept my voice calm. You used your position to target residents and profit from it. You backdated notices. You authorized tows without verification. You blocked records requests to hide it. That is on you. Monica's face twisted. You think you are some kind of hero? You think you fixed the HOA? You just made it so nobody will ever enforce the rules again. People are going to do whatever they want now. Trash everywhere. Cars parked on lawns. Noise complaints ignored. You destroyed the association. I shook my head. The association is fine. It just does not have you anymore. Monica opened her mouth, then closed it. She turned and walked away. I watched her leave. A man at the end of the aisle who had been stocking shelves looked at me and gave a small nod. I finished my shopping and went home. That night, Dave texted me, "Emergency board meeting tomorrow. They are voting on new bylaws to prevent vendor conflicts of interest. You should come." I replied, "I will be there." The next night, I sat in the back of the community center while the board presented the new policy. Any board member with a financial relationship to a vendor must disclose it in writing within 30 days. Failure to disclose is grounds for immediate removal. The policy passed unanimously. Richard stood up at the end. "Before we adjourn, I want to acknowledge the member who brought the Northside issue to our attention. This association is stronger because of your diligence. Thank you." The room clapped. I nodded but stayed seated. Barbara came over after. "You know, I was scared of Monica for 2 years. I did not think anyone could stop her. You did." I just asked questions. Barbara smiled. "Sometimes that is all it takes." A month later, Ellen sent me a message. Northside settled with the state. They are shutting down operations in Pennsylvania. Monica is being required to pay restitution to affected homeowners. You did it. I replied, "We did it." Ellen sent one more message. "If you ever need a reference for standing up to bullies, call me." The neighborhood settled into a new rhythm. The new management company sent monthly updates. Vendor contracts were posted online with full transparency. Compliance notices were issued with clear timelines and appeal instructions. The board added 2 new members who ran on a transparency platform. I kept my head down and focused on work. Kim took me off probation in June. She said, "You have been solid. No drama, no missed days, good work. Keep it up." In July, I got a letter in the mail from the Pennsylvania Attorney General. Subject: Case closure notification. The body said, "The investigation into Northside Recovery and MCC Compliance Consulting has concluded. Violations were confirmed. Restitution has been ordered. Thank you for your cooperation." Enclosed was a check for $200. Restitution for improper tow authorization and processing fees. I deposited the check and sent a thank you email to Investigator Patel. In August, Dave invited me to a neighborhood barbecue. I went. Barbara was there. Tony was there. Ellen drove up from Pittsburgh and stayed for the weekend. We stood around a grill in someone's backyard and talked about everything except the HOA. At one point, Barbara raised her drink. To Mark. For reminding us that the rules apply to everyone. Everyone clinked glasses. I looked around. These were people who had been bullied, fined, harassed, and driven out. And now they were here, together, because someone finally said no. That felt like enough. The funny thing about the whole situation was how Monica's own rules came back to bite her. She had spent 2 years telling residents we can tow first and explain later. That is how enforcement works. She had moved deadlines, changed formats, and demanded compliance without notice. She had claimed records were confidential and enforcement was discretionary. And then, when the board applied those same standards to her, when they said you missed the disclosure deadline and you do not get an appeal and you are out, she screamed that it was unfair. The board used her own playbook. No warnings, no second chances, immediate removal. Monica had built a system where nobody got the benefit of the doubt, and when that system turned on her, she had no defense. That was the karma. Dave told me later that Monica tried to appeal her removal at a private meeting with Richard. She claimed the vendor disclosure rule was not in the bylaws when she started her consulting business, so she should not be held accountable. Richard pointed out that she had voted to add the rule in 2023, after her business was already active. She had voted for the very rule that disqualified her, and she had not disclosed. Richard told her the vote was final. She left the meeting and never came back. In September, Monica put her house on the market. The listing went up on a Tuesday. By Friday, she had an offer. She moved out in October. Barbara saw the moving truck and texted me, "She is gone." I replied, "Good." Tony replied to the group chat, "Should we throw a party?" Ellen replied, "Already planning it." We did not throw a party, but we did have another barbecue. This time, more people showed up. A dozen neighbors who had heard the story and wanted to say thank you. A few brought copies of their refund checks and joked about framing them. One woman, a nurse named Carol, told me she had filed a complaint about Monica in 2022 for a mailbox fine. The board never responded. She had given up and paid the fine. When she got her refund check in July, she cried. She said, "I thought I was the only one. I thought nobody would believe me." I told her, "You were not the only one. You were part of a pattern, and the pattern is what got her caught." Carol hugged me. By November, the HOA had completed the independent audit. The auditor found 3 additional vendors with inflated billing tied to Monica's authorization. The board terminated all 3 contracts and issued more refunds. Total restitution to members, $11,000. The auditor also found that Monica had been signing vendor contracts without full board approval. She had been using a signature stamp with Richard's name on it, a stamp she was supposed to use only for routine correspondence. She had used it to approve contracts worth over $40,000. Richard was furious. He told the board he had never seen half the contracts Monica signed in his name. The board filed a police report for forgery. The police investigated. They found emails between Monica and Northside discussing payment schedules and authorization procedures. They found a contract addendum where Monica had forged Richard's signature to increase Northside's monthly retainer. They found a ledger showing MCC Compliance Consulting had received kickback payments tied to specific tow authorizations. In December, Monica was charged with theft by deception and forgery. The charges were misdemeanors, but they carried potential jail time. Her attorney reached out to the HOA and offered a settlement. Monica would plead guilty to reduce charges, pay full restitution, and accept a probation sentence. In exchange, the HOA would agree not to pursue civil damages. The board voted to accept. Richard told me later, "We just want to move on. She is gone. The money is back. That is enough." I understood. On December 18th, Monica entered a guilty plea in Erie County Court. She was sentenced to 2 years probation, 500 hours of community service, and ordered to pay restitution of $14,000 to the Harborview Village Association. Dave sent me the court filing. He added one line, "Justice served." The last time I saw Monica was at the grocery store in January. She was alone, wearing the gray jacket but no bucket hat. She looked smaller, tired. She saw me, and for a second I thought she might say something, but she just turned and walked the other way. I finished my shopping and left. The neighborhood moved on. The new board implemented quarterly town halls where residents could ask questions about finances and vendor relationships. Attendance was high for the first few meetings, then tapered off as people realized there was no more drama. Barbara ran for the board in the spring election and won. She told me, "I figured if I was going to complain about how things are run, I should help run them." Tony started a neighborhood watch group that focused on actual safety issues, not mailbox colors. Carol joined the landscaping committee and pushed for native plantings that required less maintenance. Ellen visited twice more. The second time, she brought her partner, a man named Jason who had never lived in an HOA and could not believe the whole story. Ellen told it start to finish over beers in my backyard. Jason kept shaking his head. "That is insane." Ellen smiled. "That is HOAs." By summer, the Northside case was fully closed. The state investigation confirmed systematic violations. Northside's operating license was revoked. The owner was fined and barred from operating a towing business in Pennsylvania for 5 years. Monica's consulting business dissolved. Her probation officer required her to attend financial ethics counseling as part of her sentence. She complied. The Harborview Village Association became a model for other HOAs in the region. The new bylaws were cited in a local news article about transparency and accountability in community governance. Richard did an interview and mentioned the member-led investigation that had exposed the vendor abuse. He did not name me, but Dave sent me the link with a note, "You are famous." I was not famous. I was just a guy who asked questions and did not stop when someone told me to. The thing about cold cases is that they stay cold because someone wants them to. Someone buries the evidence. Someone intimidates the witnesses. Someone changes the rules so nobody can ask questions. Monica had been doing that for years. She had used the HOA as a weapon, and she had hidden behind bylaws and procedures to make it look legitimate. She had counted on people being too tired, too scared, or too busy to fight back. But she made one mistake. She targeted someone who knew how the system worked, someone who understood deadlines and paperwork and public records, someone who was willing to dig. And once the digging started, the whole thing collapsed. I learned a lot from that experience. I learned that institutions only work when people hold them accountable. I learned that bullies rely on silence, and the moment you break that silence, they lose their power. I learned that small acts of resistance, asking for records, saving emails, recording conversations, can add up to something bigger. I also learned that you do not have to be a lawyer or an activist to stand up for yourself. You just have to be willing to do the work. The work is not glamorous. It is filing requests and reading bylaws and making spreadsheets. It is knocking on doors and collecting signatures and sitting through boring meetings. It is staying calm when someone screams at you. It is keeping records when you would rather just let it go. But the work matters. Because on the other side of that work is a neighborhood where people are not afraid of their HOA, where the rules are fair and transparent, where enforcement is consistent and honest, where someone like Monica cannot use her position to hurt people. That is worth it. As for me, I stayed in Harborview. I kept my job with the Parks Department. I got off probation and earned a small raise. I went to a few board meetings, mostly to stay informed. I voted in the elections. I helped Barbara with a fundraiser for new playground equipment. I did not think about Monica much. When I did, I mostly felt tired. Tired that it had taken so much effort to stop one person from abusing a system. Tired that the system had allowed her to do it for so long. Tired that there were probably dozens of other Monicas in other HOAs doing the same thing and nobody was stopping them. But I also felt something else. I felt like I had proven that it was possible. That one person, with enough documentation and enough determination, could make a difference. and maybe that would inspire someone else to do the same. Dave told me once, over drinks, that he had gotten messages from people in other HOAs asking how to fight back against bad board members. He forwarded them my email. I ended up talking to 3 different people, walking them through the process. Gather evidence, file complaints, build a coalition. Force transparency. 2 of them won. 1 is still fighting. I told them all the same thing I am telling you now. Do not let anyone tell you that the rules do not apply to them. Do not let anyone tell you that asking questions is harassment. Do not let anyone tell you that you have no power. You have power. You just have to use it. The neighborhood is quiet now. The drama is over. The bad actor is gone. The system is fixed, at least for now. But I keep my binder. I keep the emails and the screenshots and the recordings. I keep the state complaint confirmation and the court filing and the refund check stub. Because history matters, documentation matters, evidence matters. And if it ever happens again, I will be ready. I hope your night is calm.